At 70, Kevin Costner reveals who he doesn't want at his funeral. Kevin Costner has built a legendary Hollywood career spanning 4 decades. From the rugged charisma of The Untouchables to the weathered gravitas of Yellowstone. Now at 70, the actor who defined American masculinity for generations is reportedly reflecting on his legacy, including who he wants and doesn't want. Standing at his graveside when the final credits roll. Kevin has reached that age where he's thinking about what happens after he's gone, revealed a longtime associate who's worked with Costner on multiple projects. He's not morbid about it, just practical. He wants his memorial to reflect the authentic relationships he built, not Hollywood fakery. And he's been surprisingly candid about certain people he'd rather not have there paying insincere respects. According to those in Costner's inner circle, the actor has privately discussed a short list of entertainment figures whose presence at his eventual funeral would feel like a final betrayal. Individuals with whom his relationships soured beyond repair through public feuds, private betrayals, or bitter professional disputes. Kevin believes in forgiveness, explained a former production partner. But he also believes in authenticity. The idea of certain people showing up to his funeral for publicity or to pretend there was a relationship that didn't exist genuinely bothers him. He's told friends, if they didn't respect me in life, they don't belong at my funeral. Tonight, we reveal the 6 individuals who Kevin Costner reportedly doesn't want anywhere near his final farewell. A revealing glimpse into the grudges, tensions, and broken relationships that have marked his otherwise triumphant Hollywood journey. You were great. You were great. Thanks for having us. That was really generous. We thanks for one. Madonna, the pop star who publicly humiliated him. In the early 1990s, Kevin Costner was at the height of his fame. Fresh off his directorial triumph with Dances with Wolves and starring in blockbusters like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and The Bodyguard. Madonna was similarly at her cultural peak, pushing boundaries with her groundbreaking Blonde Ambition tour, which became the subject of the documentary film Truth or Dare, what should have been a brief, pleasant interaction between 2 entertainment titans instead, became one of the most memorable public humiliations in celebrity history, one that reportedly still rankles Costner 3 decades later. Rumors say Costner once called her concert neat, and she mocked him on camera for it, recalled a former assistant who worked with Costner during this period. You went backstage after one of her shows to be supportive and complimentary. When he told her the show was neat, she waited until he left, then turned to the camera and gagged, making it clear she found his comment unsophisticated and laughable. This moment, captured in Truth or Dare and seen by millions, became an infamous pop culture incident that portrayed Costner as square and uncool while burnishing Madonna's provocative boundary-pushing image. What made the slight particularly cutting was that Costner had attended the concert with his children and brought them backstage to meet the star only to be mocked once his back was turned. Kevin felt ambushed and used, explained a friend who witnessed the aftermath. He brought his kids to meet someone he thought was a fellow artist, only to discover he was basically set up as a punchline in her documentary. It wasn't just disrespectful to him, but embarrassing for his children. While Costner has rarely spoken publicly about the incident in the decades since, those close to him claim it fundamentally altered his view of Madonna and of the performative aspects of celebrity culture more broadly. The perceived betrayal reportedly left such a lasting impression that Madonna's name has come up in Costner's private discussions about his eventual funeral arrangements. He mentioned Madonna specifically claimed a longtime business associate. He said something like, "I don't want anyone at my funeral who would mock me behind my back. If Madonna shows up, have security escort her out." He was half joking, but the hurt was still there all these years later. This lingering resentment speaks to both Costner's long memory for personal slights and his fundamental belief in treating others with dignity, a principle he reportedly feels Madonna violated for the sake of a cheap laugh and a provocative documentary moment. But the pop queen isn't the only star who Costner has reportedly crossed off his funeral guest list. Wait until you hear about his alpha male clash with an Oscar-winning actor known for his intensity. Think about what it is that makes somebody a good parent, and it's about a constancy. 2. Sean Penn, the actor whose ego clashed with his own. On paper, Kevin Costner and Sean Penn seem cut from similar Hollywood cloth. Serious actors with directing ambitions, strong political opinions, and reputations for being uncompromising in their artistic visions. Yet, according to industry insiders, these similarities may have contributed to a long simmering tension between the two stars rather than creating common ground. Two egos, two alpha male reputations, and two very different worldviews, noted a producer who has worked with both actors at different points. Both are incredibly talented. Both take their craft deadly seriously, and both have very strong opinions about how things should be done. It's a recipe for conflict. The origins of the reported friction between Costner and Penn remain somewhat murky, with several different versions circulating among Hollywood insiders. Some trace it to competitive tensions during the late 1980s and early 1990s, when both were establishing themselves as leading men with serious acting credentials and directorial ambitions. They were competing for similar roles and similar status in Hollywood, explained a casting director familiar with both actors' careers. The difference was that Costner had achieved massive commercial success with films like Dances with Wolves and The Bodyguard, while Penn was seen as the more serious actor's actor. That created a natural tension. Costner wanting the critical respect Penn had. Penn perhaps envious of Costner's mainstream appeal. Others point to their divergent political styles as a source of friction. While both men have been politically active throughout their careers, their approaches differ dramatically. Penn's more confrontational, direct involvement in international issues, contrasting with Costner's more measured, traditionally American perspective. Kevin and Sean represent two very different versions of Hollywood activism, said a former studio executive who has dealt with both stars. Penn flies into disaster zones and meets with controversial world leaders. Costner makes films about American history and supports environmental causes. They're both passionate, but their styles couldn't be more different. Whatever the specific cause, the tension reportedly solidified into mutual avoidance over the years. Despite moving in the same Hollywood circles for decades, the two actors have never worked together and are rarely seen at the same events, a separation that appears deliberate rather than coincidental. They've maintained a cold peace by keeping their distance, revealed a longtime Hollywood reporter. But in private, Costner has apparently made comments suggesting he finds Penn's intensity and self-as seriousness off-putting. The feeling seems mutual. This professional avoidance has reportedly extended to Costner's thoughts about his eventual funeral, with Penn's name allegedly mentioned among those he wouldn't want in attendance. Kevin once made a comment about not wanting performative grief at his funeral, claimed a friend of the actor. He specifically mentioned Penn as someone who might show up to make it about himself rather than genuinely honoring their relationship, which has been essentially non-existent. The next name on Costner's list involves more than just a clash of personalities. It represents a painful professional breakup with millions of dollars and a legendary film's legacy at stake. Whitney, if you could hear me now, I would tell you you weren't just good enough. You were great. You weren't just pretty. You were as beautiful as a woman could be. And people didn't just like you, Whitney. They loved you. 3rd, Whitney Houston's estate. The legacy that turned litigious. The Bodyguard wasn't just one of the biggest box office hits of the 1990s. It was a cultural phenomenon that produced the best-selling soundtrack of all time and cemented both Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston as global superstars. The film's success created a bond between the two performers that Costner spoke about movingly at Houston's funeral in 2012, delivering one of the most heartfelt eulogies for his former co-star. Yet, according to those familiar with the situation, Costner's relationship with Houston's estate in the years following her death has been far more complicated and contentious. So much so that representatives of her estate have allegedly landed on his not welcome funeral list. After The Bodyguard, their relationship reportedly soured over sequels and control, explained an entertainment lawyer familiar with the situation. For years, Costner had been developing a concept for a sequel to The Bodyguard. After Whitney's death, those efforts continued, but with increasing friction between Costner and the executives of Houston's estate. The reported conflict centered around creative control, financial considerations, and the appropriate use of Houston's image and legacy in any potential sequel or reboot. While Costner allegedly believed he was honoring their artistic partnership and her memory, some representatives of Houston's estate apparently viewed his efforts as self-serving or insufficiently respectful of